It's been a couple years since we've been behind the wheel of a JCW Clubman. Everybody who drove our long-term car a couple years ago loved it, and I, for one, absolutely adored it. In fact, I think it's probably the best Mini on sale today. But it's been a couple years, so I wanted to get behind the wheel again, and maybe one last time, unless I buy one, and really kind of take another look at it with maybe a critical eye, given what we know is coming with the new Countryman and the other new Minis. Is it as good as we remember? Let's find out. One of the things you notice right away in the Clubman versus the Countryman is there's less weight. And I know it's not a ton. I think it's 120 some pounds less weight in the Clubman, which is something. You feel it, but you feel where you don't have the weight. So the car's lower, and so that center of gravity is lower. And that, in a lot of ways, is the critical difference between the two. You give up a little bit of volume, I guess, in terms of the height of the car, and some people like to sit up high, totally get it. But in my opinion, this is the Mini to get if you want a four-door Mini, by far. Way more usable than the four-door Cooper, way more performance-oriented than the Countryman. It hits that sweet spot that is really kind of difficult to hit. Not to say the Countryman isn't really solid. In JCW form, it's excellent. But this car is just that much better. And what is really fantastic about the Clubman is just how neutral it all feels. We're driving, of course, with the 19-inch tires and wheels. These are summer tires. This does not have adaptive suspension, which it seems does not come with the car from the factory if you order the 19-inch wheels. Interesting. And yet it feels so fluid. And I think that's the thing that's missing in the Countryman. And quite frankly, it's something that you don't get very often in front-wheel drive cars like Minis. Of course, this is all-wheel drive, but the reality is it's front-wheel drive the majority of the time. So much so that when you take off in first gear and launch it, you might feel just a touch of traction loss in those front tires, because that's primarily where the torque is, for the most part. Now, that said, it is a neutral car, or as neutral as any Mini has ever been, in my view. Having driven this thing on the track numerous times, not driving it on the track right now, of course, we're just driving it down a kind of a mountain road, obeying all traffic laws, I might add. But it's something that feels just sort of effortless. And I think that's the thing that you immediately pick up when you push a JCW Clubman, is that it feels like it wants to do this. It feels like it wants to go fast. And I think ultimately it's a car that begs to be driven in a certain way, or sort of, just enjoys it, if you will. Which sounds crazy, but it's made for it. And I think that's the thing that you pick up time and time again when you get back into it. So I'm doing that now. I haven't been in this car in 2 years, and right away, immediately feel at home. I would love to have, and this is gonna sound crazy, but I would love to have a fast shifting DCT. I've written a lot about this Ace and 8-speed. I think it's really good. Having driven the new DCT in the F56, it's not as fast as this, for sure. I definitely have some critiques to it, but the way it shifts so effortlessly, which again, I mean, that's what a DCT does. It's got 2 gears sort of simultaneously ready to roll, and the swap over is like that. It's slow. It's slower than it should be at times in the Mini's version, at least in the current iteration. But the sort of the fluidity of it is really, really nice. And so here, with the downshift, for instance, into now going to second, you feel that little jerk. You don't get that in the DCT, really. And I think that's something that it would be nice. So, if I'm really being critical, I think that's something that I feel more now than I did then, having driven a lot of these Minis with DCTs. So, for what it's worth, I mean, yeah, it's going to be an all DCT range for Mini. If you want an ICE car, internal combustion, maybe that's not so bad. I mean, yeah, manuals, I would prefer a manual. I mean, a slick shifting 6-speed gate drag in this car of BMW quality would be phenomenal, and I would pay extra for that. But if we don't have that, then the DCT is not a bad route to go. Here we have the Ace and 8-speed, again, good quick, but it does have a little bit of sort of jerk to it when you downshift at high revs. But let's move on to the engine, because that's really what this car, it's not what it's about, but it's the headline figure. 301 or 306 horsepower, depending on how you measure those things. It pulls and pulls. The mid-range is incredible. The torque down low is great. You know, the only thing it lacks is a high rev red line. You know, that's pretty much it. 6,500 is pretty low. You know, it doesn't feel particularly, it doesn't sound particularly great up in that range, but Mini's done a great job of tuning this car from a sound perspective. Even if you turn off active sound, the exhaust is really solid. And I think maybe my favorite of any Mini today, you can hear, I don't know if you can hear that, but a little plop, plop, plop as I go up the gears. And that's when this transmission is great. You know, shifting up, it is fast, and I mean, it is crisp. Something that we don't see in the DCTs right now from Mini, and perhaps we'll see that more. Shifting down, not so much. But you quickly forget that, because the power and the brakes. Let's talk about the brakes for a second. These are aluminum calipers with 16.1-inch rotors. These are big boys. And they're the same brakes that are in the GP. Although the GP actually has steel calipers because they supposedly hold up, or they dissipate heat better. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, please. I cannot remember exactly why. Something to do with track duty, though. So these are actually lighter. For road use, they make a ton more sense, but they are phenomenal. I mean, they are great at stopping this car. The fade is, even on track, minimal, having driven this car on track quite a bit. And of course, in roads like this, I mean, if you're having brake fade, you're driving too fast for public roads. But beyond that, the feel is there. The stopping power is there, and you just gain confidence continuously the more you push them. They are, in a lot of ways, kind of my favorite part of this car. Neck and neck with the power. But there is another thing that we don't talk a lot about. In fact, Mini doesn't talk a lot about it. I think MotoringFile is probably the only publication that's spoken about some of the changes that Mini made in the revisions for this car. I believe it was in 2019. There is a slightly revised suspension from 2019 forward, and what they've done is they've more or less changed some of the components in the rear and the front, and it's created a little bit more steering feel, which you're not going to get a ton of steering feel. Let's be honest. This is not sort of a pure rear-wheel drive car. It's not you know, it's not a car that sort of is designed for that. What it does do is it gives you the feedback, it creates confidence, and you place the car accurately, which is really what you want, especially when you're on mountain roads like this. And so considering all of the things I just mentioned, you know, then adding the utility of this car. So it's a 4-door, of course. It's, I would say, generally equivalent to about a 3 Series in terms of space inside, or maybe an older 3 Series. It's comfortable. If you have 4 people in here, it's not a problem. The space in the back from a luggage perspective, it's good. You know, of course, seats fold down and it gets real good. There's a little bit of area under the floor, of course, to gain a little bit more storage as well. And you know, it's a car that's so easy to live with. It is, in so many ways, one of the best daily drivers, I think, sold today. It's $50,000 as tested, $50,395 to be exact. So it's not like this thing is cheap, but considering the average price of a car right now is 47-ish, it's not exactly expensive either. And so when you think about the 306 horsepower, you think about the all-wheel drive, the utility here, and also there's the joy you get from it, the feel. It starts to become a pretty compelling prospect. But why would you want to buy this at the end of its life cycle? You know, we only have a few more months of production. Or if you're looking at this and watching this video later, why do you want to buy this used? They don't make cars like this much anymore. You know, this is a small wagon, and let's be honest, wagons are pretty much dead, not just in the U.S., but they're dying everywhere. And if you've watched or read MotoringFile over the years, you'll know the love of wagons is real. Or MotoringFile for that matter. You know, the wagon shape and the wagon, you know, just the shape itself just lends itself to utility, but it also is low to the ground, your weight's down low, and it allows you as a driver to really have the sort of the sedan feel without the SUV or crossover compromise, and that is killer. Now, add on to it the look, which I think is fantastic. The big 19-inch wheels look great. Ride okay. The multi-tone roof. This has got the white going into melting silver, going into black. Looks fantastic. And of course, it has the island blue exterior color, which again is awesome. The combo is really, really nice. It's compelling. It's really compelling, and it is a shame. You know, it's a real shame that this car is going out of production with really no replacement. I get it. I think we all do. Wagons don't sell. Many as in fact admitted as much that, you know, these are cars that are sold to people who really truly want them. They don't happen on a Clubman very often. Dealers don't stock a lot of Clubman. In fact, I believe they've gone out of, I think in Canada they've already stopped production or they've stopped importing them. So, you know, this is a car that just hasn't seen sales success, and I think we probably predicted that. If you go back and listen to some podcasts or read some articles, we you know, had hoped, of course, that this would take off, but we kind of assumed it wouldn't. And here we are at the end of its life, and it's been 2 models. The first one was the kind of the funky 3-door with the barn doors in the back. This is the 4-door, less funky, more well, much larger, of course, and it's gone, and replacing it is a small electric crossover, which, you know, the Aceman we haven't driven, I'm sure will be great, and maybe will blow our minds. But it's a sad day, because this is the end of something that, you know, in my mind at least, is the best product Mini sells today. It looks great, it drives great, it is a great car from a day-to-day perspective, and at, you know, fully loaded at about $50,000, while not cheap, it really, I think, hits a sweet spot in the market. It's also very rare when you think about it. You don't see yourself coming and going when you're in this car. It definitely draws attention if you like that sort of thing. And as we move forward year after year, I think it's going to become even more interesting to a lot of folks. I'm not going to say it's a collector's item or will be anytime soon, but it's certainly not what you see every single day, and it will be special for many years to come. So that's it, the Mini Clubman JCW. It's a bittersweet drive for us, a really nice sort of swan song, if you will, driving this car and thinking about 7 years now. We've seen it, had it on the market, and driven it all over the place. It's a great car, and one that we will definitely miss.